Good evening. I would like to call to order the January 21, 2021 Lake Washington School Board meeting. Let the record reflect that all board members, except for Director Bleasner, who's having technological issues that she's resolving, are present and participating remotely. All meeting participants will also be joining this meeting remotely in alignment with the current proclamation issued by Governor Inslee. The board meeting will be live streamed and viewable on the district's website. If you are unable to live stream the meeting, viewers can call 425-936-2813. Conference ID is 37127 to listen to the meeting. I will now entertain a motion to approve the January 21 agenda.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Stewart and seconded by Director Carlson that we approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor, please signify by voting aye.
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 And all those opposed? Okay, the motion carries. And let the record reflect that Director Bleasner was able to join the meeting now. The next item on the agenda is public comment. Due to the coronavirus, all board meetings are being held remotely. Please note that there will be no in-person public comment to ensure social distancing. The Lake Washington School District Board of Directors welcome the public to the board meetings of the board and encourage community engagement. The board dedicates 30 minutes at these meetings to hear from the public during a public comment period. Currently, there are 3 options to submit public comment. The first is by writing to the board, and those can be submitted to Diane Jenkins at bjenkins@lwsd.org. Similarly, you can send an email to Ms. Jenkins at djenkins@lwsd.org to request to make televised public comment, and a Microsoft Teams link will be shared with you that will allow you to join the board meeting during the public comment period. And you can then share your comments, which are recorded and televised. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. Finally, you can submit public comment orally by leaving a voicemail message, which we played during the public comment period. And voicemail messages may be left at 425-936-1257. And again, please limit comments to 3 minutes. At this time, we have received 1 public comment for tonight, and is a written proposal from the ACLU clubs from the Redmond and Juanita High Schools. Director Carlson has offered to read the letter aloud that was submitted.
Yes, normally we'd limit to 3 minutes per speaker, but there are 9 kids who signed this, and they're students, so I'm going to read through the whole thing. Please bear with us. So history is an introduction. History is an integral piece of constructing a worldview in the minds of impressionable young students. Its ability to provide a sense of perspective on past events and its relevance to contemporary topics is unparalleled and must be taught with care and accuracy. The current history and social studies curricula provide a worldview that is largely Eurocentric, and as a result often glosses over important historical events or atrocities committed by these European countries in the past. Lake Washington School District has previously committed to fostering an environment where students have a sufficient understanding of both United States and world history, in line with the district's mission of each student will graduate prepared to lead a rewarding, responsible life as a contributing member of our community and greater society. Therefore, it is of the utmost importance that Lake Washington curricula are reformed and improved to better reflect the perspectives of non-white cultures and people, and to be more accurate overall. Lake Washington School District has also publicly stated that they welcome student and parent input in addressing racial inequity. Addressing this proposal and the issues outlined in it is the first step in holding us accountable for the change we have promised to create. Speaking as passionate students, community members, and leaders of Juanita Senior High School and Redmond Senior High School's American Civil Liberties Union chapters, we would like to bring to your attention several frequent complaints surrounding the secondary history curriculum and possible solutions to this predicament. Below, summarized direct quotations. So first, Section 2, Current Problems, Article A, Whitewashing and Misrepresentation of People of Color. By far the most prominent student complaint is that of the misrepresentation of people of color in current history curriculums. Aside from inaccurate labels such as Indians or American Indians for indigenous peoples, implicit bias plagues the teacher's narrative of certain world cultures. As a result, inaccurate portrayals of world cultures tend to misrepresent students of a particular race or cultural background. Article B. lack of adequate racial and ethnic sensitivity. A student at Redmond High School of Indian descent shared that they felt quite uncomfortable with how their culture was portrayed in their freshman year world history class. When asked to elaborate, they quoted their teacher as follows: "After an Indian student was asked in the middle of a lecture to pronounce a word relating to Hinduism, and failing to pronounce said word, the teacher asked aggressively, 'Are you even Indian?' The Lake Washington School District claims to recognize and value that we are a diverse community and has a stated mission of providing a positive, harmonious environment in which diversity is respected and encouraged. We think that it is necessary to continue this and to take further steps to value our diversity and ensure that all students feel they are represented and valued." Article C, sugarcoating atrocities. To begin to decolonize curriculums, we must consider that on the whole, students do not receive the full scope on important cultural genocide committed on behalf of the European country. As a result, students leave history classes largely ignorant on the specifics surrounding these horrible events and do not appreciate the historical struggle many ethnic and racial minorities have had to persevere through. Although largely dictated by the curriculum standard, the allocation of class time spent discussing historically oppressive forces and events is inaccurately disproportionate to the time spent glorifying historical figures such as the Founding Fathers. While we do not expect teachers to gloss over exam content, more must be done in terms of emphasizing historical oppression. 3. Steps moving forward. We're hoping that you will consider this plight upon the curriculum and hope that moving forward, you will keep this in mind as you work on updating curriculum and training teachers in racial sensitivity. We are also aware that the district is currently working to purchase new textbooks and are hoping that you can make inclusive, representational textbooks and resources the top priority. This is an issue that affects one of the most cultural and racially diverse districts in the state, and representatives of said district, we deserve to be represented and to have our concerns considered and made a priority. In addition to searching for new textbooks, we have a list of feasible suggestions that would make Lake Washington a safe and inclusive environment. Supplemental texts that include the point of people of color point of view during important historical events. Adding a course that aims to address these inconsistencies and lack of representation. For example, Lake Juanita has already implemented a class called Decolonizing U.S. History. Encouraging teachers to stop teaching the narrative that glorifies imperialism and colonization. For example, addressing that the Founding Fathers also had place. We would love to meet with you or help in any way regarding our concerns. We have a long list of students that have felt uncomfortable with the way history is portrayed in our classrooms. We understand that this is not an issue caused or substantiated by Lake Washington. It is one example in a long list of how systemic racism is commonplace in our society. However, we also recognize that education has a key role in addressing this problem, and that Lake Washington has the opportunity to make real change that will become the first step in correcting injustices in our society. That's the end.
Thank you, Director Carlson, and thank you to all of the students who took the time to put that together and send it to us tonight. That was the only public comment we received for the meeting tonight. Again, for those who have the time and are willing to, we welcome televised public comment as well. And again, if you want to give public televised comment, please email Diane Jenkins at djenkins@lwsd.org. The next item on our agenda is the approval of the January 11 consent agenda. I will now entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
It's moved by Director Sage and seconded by Director Carlson that we approve the consent agenda. Dr. Holman, will you please poll the board?
Yes. Director Sage?
Yes.
Director Bleasner?
Yes.
Director Carlson?
Yes.
Vice President Stewart?
Yes.
And President Liberty?
Yes. Dr. Holman, will you please summarize the donations that have been received?
Absolutely. The January 11th donations total just over $50,000, both from our Lake Washington Schools Foundation and PTSA combined. As always, we thank them for their donations. It helps us meet the needs of students, provide programs, services that otherwise we may not be able to do. So we appreciate their partnership.
Excellent. The first item on the non-consent agenda for tonight is a return to school task force update. Dr. Holman, will you please provide that update?
Absolutely. Go ahead and pull up a presentation here. Okay, so tonight's Return to School Task Force presentation is really an update around our efforts related to Wednesday night's announcement in the presentation that we gave around the pathway forward, moving towards learning models that include both in-person and remote learning, and the efforts to date and efforts moving forward. Tonight, I've actually asked each of our cabinet members to just provide you with an update around the work that's occurring in their divisions related to all of the effort that goes into changing learning models in the middle of the year. And so we know this is a big effort here internally. We also want to thank our families for what they're doing right now, evaluating learning models for their child, evaluating what's going to be best for their child for the remainder of the 2021 school year, and knowing that that's a big decision. Tonight, we're, as we speak, in the process of pushing out additional information to our families. We've received a number of questions since last Wednesday that were submitted through our website, and it really helped us to identify some of those key frequently asked questions, and so we're able to provide responses to the majority of the questions that were coming in. We know that this isn't easy. It's a difficult decision to make, and so we want to make sure that we provide as much detail about what an in-person learning model and what a remote model will look like moving forward as families make this decision. And so I just want to ground us again back in our guiding principles and goals when we thought about our return to school task force efforts. It was interesting, again, to pull this up and to just review, 7, 8 months ago, what were we thinking about when we were thinking of all of the work that was going to go on this year, that we really wanted to make principled decisions as we work through whether it was remote learning at the beginning of the year, all of the efforts that we're talking about right now, thinking about offering an in-person learning model, but also continuing a robust remote learning experience for our students. And so that guiding principle 1, protect the health and well-being of students, staff, and families. And with all of these, there's a tension of that quote-unquote doing the right thing. And so it's being thoughtful about the decisions that we make, always keeping in mind the impacts, thinking of our students, thinking of our staff, thinking of our families. That second principle there is to educate each student, and that's been a partnership with our families, our staff, learning new models for teaching students during this remote period, and as we transition into a period where we also bring on an in-person. That in-person learning experience is going to look different. It's going to feel different for students and families. And so, our staff, as always, are committed to educating the students that they're serving. And so providing the appropriate time and training and resources for them to have their classrooms ready, set up in the appropriate manner to maximize safety, mitigate the risk of the spread of the virus on our campuses, all focused on educating the students that do come to our in-person learning, and then continuing that robust experience remotely as well. That third principle of ensuring active, consistent, and meaningful connections with each student. What you saw on Wednesday night, as Mike was talking about some of the draft schedules, you could see within that the idea of trying to provide adult connections, peer connections on an ongoing cycle, both for our youngest learners and for our in our hybrid model, as we're thinking about, how do we make sure that students have multiple touch points throughout their week, so that it isn't just 2 touch points in an in-person model, and then they don't hear or see adults for the rest of the week. And so being really thoughtful about how we move that forward, how we think about that planning and those efforts. The fourth principle of proactively addressing inequities related to race, ability, socioeconomic status, and language that have been exacerbated by the pandemic. Those are lenses that we truly try and apply as we're thinking about really everything we are doing throughout this school year, knowing that it's continually challenging ourselves to do our work better, to apply this lens to meet the needs of students to a much greater degree. And then that fifth principle of engaging our families. We've provided communication on an ongoing basis since July, trying to provide timely, accurate information to our families, really about the state of the virus within our communities, our work to continue planning, their experiences in remote learning, the surveys we conducted, and so just that ongoing engagement with our families has been critical through this time period as well. And so then that leads to the goals that we identified early on. Primary health and safety, mitigate and minimize the spread of coronavirus in accordance with health agency guidance. We have our COVID-19 safety plan, which truly is a living document. As agency guidance gets updated, we analyze our COVID-19 safety plan, make those appropriate adjustments, and then push that out to our school teams so that they can make any changes that are required there. But the work of mitigating and minimizing the spread of coronavirus really is a collective effort by everyone. Strict adherence to our safety protocols is essential, and so that is ongoing work. And when we think about bringing more students back to campuses, there's going to be new learning environments, there's going to be new protocols for more students, and so making sure that we communicate that well, that we provide the appropriate instruction for our students, and that we're helping them to align with our COVID-19 safety plan as well. Our second goal is to keep staff and students safe and support social emotional well-being and interactions. And as you know, there's been a number of different ways that we've supported social emotional well-being, knowing that ongoing connection and communication with our students is critical, providing them opportunities to engage with peers. I believe today was our first day of providing athletic training for our high school students. But again, that's within a very strict and rigid safety plan to keep our students safe, and there are processes and procedures for that. But those types of opportunities are critical for our students to maintain that connection with their peers, doing things that they enjoy and that they really like. That third goal of prioritize inclusive access to learning for each student. When we think about our learning models, it's about truly thinking about all of our students. And as we develop models, thinking about how do all learners have access and inclusivity within those learning models. That fourth goal of supporting our families, not only through communication, but thinking about food resources and teacher outreach to families. There's so many different aspects to supporting our families through all of this and making sure that they do feel connected and engaged with their schools and classrooms. And that fifth goal, to enable staff and students to return to learning in ways that are significantly better than during our closures in 2019-2020. And so these were goals that were set, I believe, May, June of last year. And so when we were thinking about remote learning last school year, and now when we think about remote learning that we've experienced in 2021, again, significant growth and progress during this school year to date. And we know as we transition to new learning models, there will be a time of growth and learning, and but there will be some pieces to our in-person that are much more familiar than the remote space, but there are also going to be things that are substantially different. But it's about making those learning environments engaging and positive and academically rigorous for our students as well. And so with that, I'm going to ask the team to provide you with updates. And why don't we go ahead and just take questions at the end of each person's presentations. Most of them have 2 to 3 slides, and so we'll just pause at their last slide for any questions that board members have through the presentation. And so first up is Mike Van Orden, Associate Superintendent of Teaching and Learning.
Thanks, Dr. Holman. As you recall, last week during our Pathway Forward presentation, we shared examples of what a school day might look like as we have students, at least at the elementary school, returning, and then talked about some of the steps that are in place to get us culminating with a secondary return to in-person learning. What I wanted to do tonight was share with you just some examples, and this is not a comprehensive list, but examples of some of the planning work that now needs to happen to make those schedules a reality and start putting some details to them. So I have tonight here with this particular part of the presentation, just some examples of really immediate things that are happening sooner than later, planning areas for in-person learning. And so one of those, as you might imagine, is making sure that we have class lists set up and teacher assignments as we balance the students who will be remaining remote and the students who will be returning to in-person. And because of the way we have to keep class sizes at very specific levels to keep them safe for in-person learning with a maximum of about 15 students per class, and that our current classes are running at 20 plus students, we have to balance out those in-person and remote. And so that'll be a pretty heavy lift. Typically takes place in the spring when we're setting up class lists, for example, at the elementary school. In addition, if we start thinking about secondary, we have to consider schedules and multiple teachers as well. And so that's some of the planning work that's happening. In addition, we shared, again, some sample schedules that show what instruction could look like. At the same time, we really need to start digging into the details now. So all the content areas, but also our folks who provide specialist services to our students during an instructional day that support our students as they learn, depending on where they are. So for example, we have English learner programs, we have special education programs, highly capable programs, to name a few. And then we also have, at the elementary level, library, music, and PE courses. Now, knowing that folks who deliver these services often, in fact, in almost all cases, interact with students in multiple classes, we are being really thoughtful about how do we deliver that instruction with the goal of making sure that we limit exposure of any one person to multiple groups. And so by and large, most likely those programs will need to be delivered remotely with cases where there will be potential for some in-person as well. And so if we look at an instructional day, the best time to probably deliver remote will be in those afternoon windows that we have available. And that was something I don't know if we mentioned enough last week is, one of the values of having that afternoon time that's more remote is that we can then use that time to deliver all of those wonderful programs and those necessary programs for our students. In addition, we'll need to be adjusting our content time because we'll have to be now, in addition to what we would normally do in a school, be teaching things like how do you play at recess? How do you come in the morning? How do you share supplies in a classroom so that we're not spreading them out? So just lots of routines that have to be taught and built into an instructional schedule. In addition, classroom setup, much of that we've already started, but even just the function of getting your classroom set up for instruction, putting all of the instructional materials on the walls, getting desks and materials all kind of set up and ready to go will take some time as well. I think I mentioned this last week, purchasing new instructional materials to make sure that students have materials both at home and in person. And then, as we mentioned last week as well, we're to keep our class sizes low in first grade. And so all those teachers need instructional materials and teachers' guides. So those have all been ordered and we'll be distributing those. I mentioned briefly already the idea that with curriculum, and just the way we are delivering curriculum, we have to rethink the sequence of content and how much time we spend on content. And so we're developing guides for that. And then finally, as you can imagine, there are just countless questions that come up in our new environment and wonderings about how do you deliver instruction in these new ways. And so we're developing guidance documents and question and answer documents for teachers and for principals and for classified staff, as well as students and families. So again, that's just a snapshot of the hundreds of different components that have to be in place for really high quality in-person instruction to occur. And we are gearing up in lots of different ways to carry that out. So our next slide, as we were sharing the other nights, if we could move to the next one. Perfect, thanks. We, as I mentioned, we'll be hiring a number of new teachers to keep our class sizes low enough, and we're in the process of interviewing for that right now. And typically what we have for our new teachers is a program called the Educator Introduction Academy. It's actually a nationally recognized and awarded program that puts our new teachers through an intensive multi-day training and learning experience to get familiar with the curriculum, learn about Lake Washington, learn about their classes. And so we have a team from our professional learning department led by Emily Young, who's been putting together an intensive 3-day training for our new teachers. And so as soon as they're hired, they will go into that. We're also looking at very specific curriculum-focused courses for folks. So if you're teaching science or math, or if you need content to help you instruct, there's very specific courses that are being designed for that and to be delivered through our professional learning management system and remotely. In addition, we have, again, just this wonderful program that's been in our district for years. It's called the New Teacher Support Program, and so there will be continued support for our current new teachers who we hired at the beginning of this year, but also the new teachers who are coming on board. And then we'll have some on-demand and available training for folks. For example, trauma-informed practices for kids who have been experiencing challenges in their current environment or continue to experience challenges in their environment, and how do teachers adjust their instruction to best support students. In addition, quite a bit of work around special education and safety and health that's all being queued up to be delivered. As you know, even though we are starting to provide more in-person, we're also thinking about training that needs to be delivered in different ways. So for example, training that's delivered remotely, training that's delivered synchronously and asynchronously. And so again, just an amazing professional learning department that is in high gear right now, getting ready for all of the training and support needs. And so our last slide. As I mentioned last week, we are we're moving in stages. And so our main emphasis for a lot of our planning has been elementary, and then knowing that as we move up the elementary grades and into middle and high school, that we need to have planning that matches that same kind of sequence. And so our special education group has actually been working throughout the fall and the winter to develop resources and potential models and to do research. And so they are going to move into very intensive bargaining this week. And that's continuing work that's already been happening. And then in addition, we will be doing quite a bit of work around secondary. And again, much of these things have already been in place as we plan for our return to school. So we've had task forces and work groups. We are now moving into a stage of bargaining with more of an emphasis on secondary as we start to get more progress with our elementary. So again, you can see here lots of different moving pieces that all need to come together to get us ready for a return to in-person in a staged approach. And as I mentioned at the beginning, these are just examples. There are many, many more things that are happening. And then finally, I think what I would say is also know that there'll be communication around each of these things as they start to become more finalized and more ready. Much of that communication will come from schools and teachers sharing things like schedules and examples and reaching out to students and families. And so quite a bit of information that will be coming folks' way. But I think we're in a good place in terms of the planning and preparation that we're doing for a return that will be safe and also ensure that students' academic needs are being met. I think that's the end of my portion.
Any board member questions at this time? Director Bleasner?
Thank you. So just a question. I know that we had done the survey prior. So sort of what percentage of our families and our students were expecting that they might be returning? Do you have any idea sort of what that estimate might be?
Yeah, so that data is coming in as we speak. As you know, our K-1 families have until tomorrow evening for them, it's update their preference. For our second through fifth grade families, they have until Wednesday evening to provide us with that information. To be honest with you, it looks to be coming in about the same as it did in the fall. Around 40% requesting a remote, and my team's going to tell me if I'm Yeah, 40% requesting a remote with 60% requesting in person, give or take some percentage points. But those data are still coming in through tomorrow and Wednesday.
Thank you. So I know the other question that has come out and has always been the question is when you look at the hybrid model and the amount of instructional time that's built in there versus a remote model and the instructional time, how will you be aligning those in regards to curriculum delivery and what the students are learning along that way so that it's similar in those two areas regardless?
Yeah, so a few things. One is, I think we shared last week that when students are fully, there's 2 days, one day they're in school, one day they're remote, that there actually is some time built in the afternoons. And again, this was one of the advantages of having some remote time in the afternoons for potential for teachers to reach out and connect with kids who are remote. And so then that sets them up for the next day of instruction. And so that's part of the continuity there. In addition, we are doing things as we think about students who are remote and students who are in, for example, a hybrid, of how do we build in time for teachers to collaborate and talk with each other about what they're teaching. So if I'm at a school and I have a grade level team that's all teaching second, there's time for those teachers, the second grade teachers, whether they're remote or in person, to collaborate. And then finally, as I mentioned, those curriculum guides and those scope and sequence to say, here's the things you should teach, here's the order in which you should teach them, and here's roughly how long it should take. Then that's a way we can make sure that even though we may be delivering in different ways and the timing may be a little bit different from week to week, by the end of the semester, there's the same essential content and teachers have time to actually teach it and do it well. So that's kind of the current thinking. There'll have to be some adjustments quite a bit along the way, but we think that'll get us to kind of that core content. And then as I mentioned, really, we are emphasizing, particularly for in-person, those core content areas with more specialist time in the afternoon that can be delivered remote.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions?
I believe Director Stewart's hand might be up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Director Stewart.
It's all right. I'm used to being ignored. How will in-person education change for the special needs students?
Yeah, so that's part of that last slide is there's been a lot of planning and effort that's taken place so far. And so the next phase of the work is bargaining with our LWEA partners. And so a lot of the work they'll do is examine different models, talk about the best ways to support our teachers as they deliver that instruction. And so there's quite as you can imagine, a number of moving pieces. Everything from what's the best way to deliver services, making sure it's comparable to general education and making sure our kids all get good general education instruction. Transportation's part of the conversation. As you know, Mark, individual education programs that have to be reviewed and reconsidered in light of this new way of delivering instruction. So there's planning that's happening for that with teachers. And as you know, Dr. Hitch is doing a number of family information opportunities or family connection opportunities. And then there's a whole bargaining process that has to take place. As I mentioned, is starting very intensely this week. And all of that gets matched up. Okay. All of that being said, again, it's a lot dependent on student needs. So for example, with our program model where we have learning centers and transition centers, there's a whole series of work that has to happen for that. And then making sure that our students in those programs have access to general education. So that needs to be all lined up. And students that are receiving what we call resource types of programs, we have to make sure that those are matched into the general education schedule as well. So just planning that's happening outside of bargaining and planning that's happening inside of bargaining, and all those get woven together to a final kind of plan that we'll be developing.
Yeah, I understand all the moving pieces and especially the negotiations, and I'm assuming the same goes for how the inclusion programs will work. Mm-hmm. And the addition of multiple pairs. I assume we're not only recruiting teachers, we're recruiting pairs, and we're recruiting everybody else in the near Western world. Yeah. My concern is, and I'll voice this, I don't know if it's Mike, you, or John, or both. I don't care. We seem to be on a very tight timeline, and I'm concerned about the ability to not only enact it from our end, but also for families to be able to adapt once it is put in place. A lot of moving pieces not only on our end, but on the parents' end. They're trying to figure out, okay, can Johnny or Susie be on a bus by X o'clock? Are they going to have to be remote? Or if they're going in class, it's only going to be a half day, so somebody has to be home to receive them. I think they're going to need a little bit more, as much notice as possible, to be quite frank. And we've got less than a month. I'm a little bit more than concerned, if you will, about this time frame. Anyone can speak to that?
Sorry, I have to turn two mics on. And so, yes, it's a concern for us, and that's why the increased timeline to get the bargaining process, and really it isn't starting from scratch, it's really starting from, current and building from there. Yes, it's a compressed timeline, and that's why we want to get that work completed so we can communicate expectations to families. Mike, I'm just not remembering in Shannon's communication to the community when she said her next update would be to the community. I believe it was the 18th of January, but I just want to be clear if that's...
Yeah, we can double check on that, John.
Okay.
I'm not just talking about the special needs community in that respect. I'm talking about all the kids. I think that parents from Alpha to Omega are just kind of, their minds are kind of swirling. How are we going to do this in less than 20 some odd days?
Yeah, and so that's why we're asking families to choose now, because once they make that selection, then they can actually start that planning, because at that point they do have some of the variables decided, and so it's from announcement about 4 weeks away for our staff and our families. But yes, I'm not disagreeing that it's not a compressed timeline.
Okay. Is there any possibility that timeline might be pushed back?
At this time, no.
Okay.
Director Sage and then Director Carlson.
Thank you. I have a question as it relates to childcare. With some parents choosing in person, this changes maybe the type of childcare that they need and whether or not we are, I guess just a clarification that we are offering childcare. That you can find it on our website, and they do not have to be an essential worker to utilize the childcare.
So I don't want to take the wind out of the sail of Barbara's presentation later on, but I'll give you a brief preview. Yes, there will be childcare continuing to be provided for families and not just essential workers. And that's been true all year. Hasn't been just essential workers.
I think it is a little confusing the way it's worded on the website under the childcare information. Just some of the wording used makes it almost sound like you need to be an emergent worker.
Gotcha. Okay.
Thank you.
So, John, for the this is just a follow-up to Mark's questions, because I've gotten whiplash from the community. I've got some people who really wanted us to be resuming yesterday, and I've got plenty of people who think we shouldn't resume at all. I wanted to make it as clear as possible. What we're talking about is not a survey, but this is opting into this channel or that channel, and they won't be surprised on February 4th by which channel they are in. It's not like there's a limited number of spots for in-person learning, and some people won't get it. We're actually trying to meet everybody. Is that the correct interpretation?
That is correct, and that's actually, when we think about all of the different kind of variables, we're actually starting with the student selection variable first, to then determine how many in-person classrooms we need at any individual school, how many remote classrooms we need at any individual school, so that we can actually provide families with their selection. Yes.
Thank you.
Director Stewart, your hand is still raised. Did you have another question? Oh, you're on mute.
Okay. Yeah. Everybody always wants to mute me, family included. Anyway, a question that's been popping up a lot and I don't really think there's an answer for it, to be quite frank, but perhaps from all the planning y'all are doing that I'm just not in tune with, a lot of parents, and it seems like it's the early elementary parents, that are concerned about their child being able to stay with their teacher. And the question keeps coming up. To be quite frank, I'm not sure how in the world one could do that, given the fact we're having to make classrooms smaller and have more teachers and so forth. But could you address this tonight for the folks that are watching?
Yeah, absolutely. I've received that question a number of times as well. And it's a message to K-5 families, I believe it was on Friday, just, expressing our understanding for why a family wants that, because, as educators, we know that continuity is ideal. As we make this change, we also know that there are variables that are going to cause some students to have to change teachers. And that's just the nature of changing learning models in the middle of a school year. And so, when we think about, what are those values we'll enter into determining classroom placement, that is one of those values. If we have the ability to keep a student and a teacher together, that's best for both of those individuals, both the student and the teacher, in maintaining that continuity. But we can't assure that in any single situation, just because there are times, and I think the example I've given that I think tells the story the best, is if you have a kindergarten teacher who's teaching in person, and she has 20 students now, and all 20 students select in person, 5 of those students would be required, because of the health and safety requirements, to transition to a new classroom. And so there's all of these pieces that we have to fit together as we're thinking about class placement moving forward into both the in-person and the remote environments. So it isn't that we don't want to be able to provide that, it's just we can't provide that as an assurance moving forward.
Well, having grown up in a military town where there were kids that were coming in and out of a town once every 2 years, once every other year, whatever, I saw that it was difficult, but those kids really adjusted as well as perhaps better than the parents did at times, because they're more resilient in that respect. It is difficult, I understand. I changed schools in the middle of grammar school, and yeah, it was a shock to the system, but it is what it is. I just hope that we can kind of think of that as, like you say, it's not a desirable effect, but it's the only workable option when we have to trim down those class sizes.
Director Bleasner, I have a follow-up question on this same topic. Is that all right if I ask it? Thank you. Dr. Holman, what is your expectation of when placements would be communicated to families?
Yeah, we were just working through some of those details today, and we're still in the process of mapping. So we will get student data, and then we'll get our staff data, and so that actual calendar is being processed as we speak, and so we'll be able to let families know shortly what that timeline will be, but it will be a week and a half or so before the transition.
Okay. A week and a half or so from now?
Yes, and a week and a half prior to February 4.
Got it. Right. Got it. Okay, thank you. Director Bleasner?
Yeah, so just as I'm hearing what you're saying and the answers to these questions, the key sort of value I keep hearing is it's a student-centered approach in how you're looking at this, recognizing all the additional parameters that have come in, the health and safety requirements that have come through, along with working to reduce class size in which to do so, and all the components. So appreciate the balancing act that takes place and recognizing the time frame. And within all of that, we do always have a pandemic that is occurring, that is shifting and moving on us as well. So that is another component that's in this. So the flexibility in which to be able to respond is important. So appreciate those pieces going forward, and recognizing the importance of the parameters and maintaining that student-centered focus. That our goal is to provide the best education, be it in a remote setting, and I think families need to feel very confident that they can choose remote and that remote will connect with a neighborhood school as well. It is not a separate setting, as well as an in-person model. And that, so appreciate all the work that's going into that. Encourage getting that information out as soon as possible. I do think that that's a key component to just settle the what's coming in expectation, and I think that would be something we would encourage, that sooner is better.
We completely agree with that, and I saw Mike's hand go up as well.
Yeah, just maybe one last thing to add in kind of along the lines of the conversation we were just having, and I had this experience with one of my own daughters. It was actually in kindergarten, and midway through the year at her elementary school, there was a teacher change. And I just remember that feeling for my wife and I, and we weren't in a pandemic, and everything was relatively stable, but it was a significant blow to us. What helped us was the new teacher spent time building a relationship with her new class. And similarly, we have such skilled kindergarten and first grade teachers that they know how to build those relationships with kids, and will spend that time at the beginning really reestablishing those. And again, it's not ideal. You've spent time establishing a relationship already, and now we're asking folks to do it again. But I do have a lot of confidence in our folks, and we are thinking about how do we create schedules, especially those first few weeks, where we really are rebuilding those relationships, creating classroom communities. And the value of that is that kids are together, and those peer relationships and that in-person learning for so many of our kids is so valuable. And so we recognize it's going to be a transition, and it's going to be more challenging for some students and families than others. And we have teachers that are skilled in helping students to make that transition. And again, not to say that's an easy task or it will go well for every single person right from day one, but we do have a lot of confidence in our teachers to build those relationships and still have multiple months this year to carry on really great instruction for our kids.
Okay, any other questions before we move to the next presentation? Okay. Thank you, Director Van Orden.
Okay, and our next presenter is Matt Gillingham, Associate Superintendent of Student and Community Services. Welcome, Matt.
All right, thank you, Dr. Holman. That conversation really kind of sets the stage for what I'm about to talk here, which is really about kind of how are we tending to the social, emotional, and the mental health needs of our students during this time of transition and just continuing during this pandemic. And so, as Mike talked about, of really kind of being really intentional those first few weeks that our students are making that transition, regardless of whether they're making a transition to in-person or they're making a transition within the remote setting. We know that for our elementary students, it's a time of transition. And what we want to be able to communicate to our students during this time is that they matter, that they belong, and that they are safe. And so to that end, our student services department is working on a relationship training series that's based on the Establish, Maintain, Restore model, which the EMR, which is a model that we've been using with our teachers at a variety of levels. That really centers on the importance of building relationships, and we just know how critical that is. Additionally, we've developed a K-5 social emotional learning toolkit and developed weekly social emotional learning activities that focus on how do we build trust, how do we help our students manage stress, and how do we help our students think through equity and diversity. And so, so I'm really proud of the work that this department has done, led by Johnny Fu this year, in really coming up with creative ways in which we can help support our teachers in supporting their students in what has just been a very exceptional time that's been challenging to be able to establish those relationships. We have I'm going to talk about some of the partnerships that we have in place. We have a new partnership that I haven't talked with the board about before that's specific to the elementary level. So we have partnered with CMAR, and they are going to be providing parent support groups focused on trauma, behavioral challenges, and depression and anxiety. And the focus really is on helping to support parents because we believe that it has that will help directly impact student overall well-being, and particularly in the type of environment we are now, being able to connect with parents. So I'm excited that we're going to be able to bring that service online here soon. We're continuing to finalize some partnerships with other community agencies that we hope will lend some additional supports this year and into the coming years for our elementary students and families. At the secondary level, we continue to have online supports. We have continued our partnership with Youth Eastside Services. They're offering both individual and group mental health support. Evergreen Health both is continuing to offer online supports and we've just reestablished providing 1 day of in-person services at some of our designated high schools. And so, we're beginning to turn some of these services back on in person. We continue to have middle school social emotional lessons. And it's not listed here, but we've also been increasing our training for adults that are supporting youth in the youth mental health first aid model, and are working to train an additional 300 staff members over the next couple of months. So lots of supports, both proactively and in response to the needs of our students around our social emotional services and mental health supports. And we'll continue to focus as we transition students into at whatever level into new models, really coming back to the importance of relationships and helping students navigate those changes. All right, so I have we've talked a lot about safety and our COVID-19 safety plan, which is public and available on our website. It's currently, it is a living document. This latest version is now up to 101 pages, and is something that our teams worked really hard on to ensure that we're really incorporating guidance from the Department of Health, Seattle King County Public Health, the CDC, the State Department of Labor and Industries, and OSPI. And so you can imagine just the challenge of incorporating all of this guidance and figuring out how do we operationalize it. So we have a emergency coordination center team that meets regularly, is constantly looking at this guidance, working with these partners and working with others to ensure that we're interpreting them correctly and then incorporating them into our plans. I think it's really important to reiterate that all along we have thought about safety and security in terms of layers. And so we call it's a multi-layer approach, and so that's never relying on any single one kind of tool to try to keep us safe, but really on using a variety of tools. So that includes screening and attestation. What that looks like when our students come to school is their family members will have, their adults will have provided an attestation that they don't have symptoms of COVID-19 and that they haven't been in contact with people or in certain situations that put them at risk for COVID-19, and that we'll do daily temperature screenings. Our staff, any visitor, anybody that's coming into any of our buildings needs to provide that same level of attestation, including doing daily temperature checks. Hand hygiene, both hand washing and the use of sanitizer when appropriate are really important mitigating tools. Physical distancing, you heard Mike talk about how, thinking about physical distancing in the classroom. and how that affects our class sizes. Face coverings continue to be really important. So know that when our students and staff are on campus, that they will need, the expectation is that people are wearing masks at all times, and that in certain circumstances where somebody might not be able to wear a mask, that we're looking at use of face shields or other mitigating efforts. You know, and then our cleaning, sanitation, sanitizing and disinfecting as well. So those are some of the key kind of multi-barrier approaches that we have. Each building, we haven't talked a lot about this, but at each building we have an incident command structure, and what that means is that means that we have designated people at each building to carry out certain roles related to implementing this multi-barrier approach. We have a COVID-19 supervisor. We have somebody that's focused on cleaning and custodial services. Somebody that's focused on health and following up on any incidences or suspected cases. Somebody that's in charge of signage and cordoning off areas. And they receive support from central office staff in an emergency coordination center that's actually set up to be able to respond to emergencies 24/7. We have bi-weekly meetings with these COVID-19 supervisors to make sure that they understand the plan. You know, it's certainly complex, and while updating on a monthly basis is important to ensure that we're incorporating the latest guidance, that also you know, means that we need to continually be in contact with our COVID supervisors so that they understand what might have changed and what we need to put into place. Anytime there's a positive case, we have a response plan, and that's buildings actually receive centralized support with the emergency manager and additional district level staff. That a conference with the building team around kind of the unique details of that case, and to help them navigate through that. It also includes some automatic responses when it comes to you know, sanitizing, disinfecting, and HVAC and coordinating off areas. So I talked about us providing monthly updates to the safety plan, and over the course of the remainder of this month, our emergency coordination center is going to be doing site visits at each school to ensure compliance with the plan and to provide support in anticipation of us bringing our K-1 students back. You know, the one of the key things that we want to also ensure is that there's a level of transparency. I think with that helps people understand what's going on. And so just as our safety plan is publicly available, later this week we're going to be launching a health and safety dashboard. And that will share the number of positive cases that we have relative to the numbers of students and staff on campus and the number of sites that are serving students. So that way we can, we've been developing this as a model for us to be able to track, to be able to see if we have any issues, and just to be able to monitor, you know, kind of the state of COVID-19 within our campuses throughout all of this fall and up to date. We've averaged about one positive case a week. They've all been cases that have been from outside the school setting, and because of our positive case response, we've been able to isolate and stop any spread within our setting. So it's important. It's something we're already monitoring, and we've been working on a way to make this information publicly available. So we'll be sharing that with the public, making this publicly available later this week, and we'll be updating it, I believe, every Wednesday basis. So one more slide. And some of our work over the next couple of weeks will really be around communication. So As more, particularly we talked about as, students' assignments are made clearer, as we get nearer to that transition period back, we'll be producing communication that's going to help our students and families kind of understand what does it look like to return to campus. So we'll have a guidebook, we'll have videos that will kind of try to go through the discrete processes of how do you enter school and wearing masks and how we do snacks or how you're washing your hands. We have a FAQ. That's a live document where we continue to receive questions from parents and community members and staff, and so we're trying to keep that updated as quickly as we can. And then of course we have the dashboard. So we know that communications is really important, and our communications department led by Shannon Parthmer are working on producing material that's going to help, hopefully help ease that transition for our students and families as we go to return.
Director Sage and then Director Stewart.
Just wanted to double check that we're also producing these videos for different languages, or how does that work?
Yeah, so we will be producing them I believe in English, and Shannon, correct me if I'm wrong, English and Spanish, and then working to make them accessible in other languages, as well as we have on our website anything that we put on our website in printed material. There's a little globe icon at the top of the website that translates the text of the website into different languages, and that's, we actually throughout the fall have been doing some research to try to find out how to make our information more accessible. And one of the things we found out was that the globe icon is a tool that we have that is I believe underutilized or not quite the level of awareness that within our families and with our staff members to be able to direct people to be able to get information translated.
So to back up, I just want to make sure that I understood, you are working on producing these in Spanish and English, the videos.
Yes.
And is there an option to take a video and use that globe to change the language? Does it give you subtitles?
If we have, yeah, I don't know. I'd have to ask Shannon specifically about how that's produced. I know that our text can be translated online. So we'll have to follow back up with you on that.
Thank you.
Director Stewart, your hand is raised, and then Director Carlson.
You're muted, Mark.
Yeah, Director Stewart, you're muted if you're hearing this. Okay, we'll go to Director Carlson. If Director Stewart is able to fix it, we'll go back to him.
That's fine. It might be technical. So I had a couple of specific questions. The countermeasures sound appropriate. The one that I find of greatest value and interest is obviously face masks. And even all other things being equal, I can see a second grader dropping their face mask into a urinal. So what are our plans for providing face masks when face masks are needed?
Yep. So we began acquiring PPE, so face masks, face shields, gloves. We've been, you name it. We've been acquiring PPE way back, towards the back in the summer, right? We were getting ready for a hybrid for all of our students throughout the summer, and so we're actually in good position right now in terms of the number of masks that we have available. So we have disposable, the surgical face masks, and so those are things that we'll be able to provide students with a replacement face mask should they need one. Right. The expectation is that that people are wearing face masks. And we also have a system in place where we're monitoring our consumptions of PPE. So the CDC had developed a tool by which schools and other places can monitor kind of what their burn rate is. And so that's something that our Risk and Safety Services Department, led by Scott Emery, has developed a way that they're tracking that. So that way, we're able to see in advance if it looks like we're needing to order additional supply, and ensure that we get on that early. So, but we're because of being in remote as long as we have been, we're in good shape on PPE right now.
Okay, and for staff, we're providing masks. For kids, it's replacement when it's a disaster. Is that the plan?
We have cloth-based masks for students. We also have additional of the disposable masks for students as well. So we provided staff with cloth masks, and staff also have available disposable masks if needed.
Fantastic, thank you.
You're welcome.
Director Stewart, and then Director
Sorry.
Sage. No problem.
Earlier, you were breaking up, and I wasn't sure you were calling on me.
Oh, apologies.
No, not your fault. I'm sure it's mine. Quick question for y'all. First, just going back to the map real quick, Matt. The disposable ones have the little metal strip across the top that helps mold to the nose. Wouldn't those more likely be easier to keep on a child's face? God knows it's easier to keep on an adult's face. And I've noticed, to be quite frank, that as hard as they try, when they're talking, those things tend to slip, move, whatever. And it seems like the disposable ones would really be beneficial in that respect to help keep them in place. I watched a reporter just the other night doing a one minute story, and her mask slipped 3 times. So if we could think about that as we're looking at what we're going to be handing out to kids. And second of all, I love the dashboard. I love all the information. How fast, and I use the word pivot, but how fast can we pivot to shutting it down if we have to, if the infection rate goes up? Given the new strains that's coming in, with the kids being more susceptible to that strain, I just want to know, I want parents to know that we're thinking of this, we're planning for it, and we can do it in a heartbeat.
Yeah, and I'll take that one, Matt. It really is about our collaboration with King County Public Health. I can tell you, my contact at King County Public Health gets back to me within an hour to 2 hours almost every time I email, and if I need a phone call, I can usually get that scheduled within an hour to 2 hours. And so it's, looking at the new guidance that Public Health has provided, really their recommendation in really any conditions is that elementary students have the option of learning in person. And that is based on the research that they've done both in Washington State, looking across the country and across the globe in places that are related or similar to our K-12 environments and the spread of the virus in the K-12 environments. And so that really is the recommendation, is that elementary learners are in person. And so we will continue to work with our public health officials to make sure that as conditions change, if they do, that continues to be the guidance.
Director Blazer, sounds like you have a follow-up on this.
Yeah, I would, because I think one of the other pieces that Mark was bringing up was along the lines of if there was concern of transmission within the school, if there was 2 cases or 3 cases, how capable we would be in which to cohort quarantine and do those pieces. Are there some standards in place as to when you might consider closing a classroom, when you might close a school, if there were to be considered an outbreak within that setting? Is that fair, Director Stewart?
You're thinking a little bit deeper than I was. I was really thinking more systemically as opposed to the classroom, but go ahead. I'll listen to any answers.
Matt, do you just want to talk about the process that's in place?
Yeah, so we have the positive case response process. Kind of summarize it as best I can here without getting too detailed. We have an expectation that that the COVID-19 supervisor is notified. So if an employee or a student, we want their family to notify us that yes, we tested positive, and like I said, we've had experience with this because we've averaged one case a week. At the building level, part of that incident command team, so there's some things that they're doing. First is we need to get information. So the medical coordinator works to gather what information. So we're looking at when was the last time they were in the building, what rooms were they in, any close contacts. So they really start getting into a lot of details right away to try to find out as much information about this person's experience. And so we do a couple of things. One, we cordon off any areas because we may need to go in and provide, to disinfect those areas. And so we have a whole kind of support services response. But then where there's the COVID-19 supervisor, the building principal contacts our emergency manager, and they discuss kind of what are the implications around that. And then there's a call that comes up to a cabinet member. It's either going to be Dale Cody or it's going to be myself. We process what are the recommendations in terms of how many people might be impacted. Also thinking programmatically, right? So does it make sense? We've had times where we've taken a classroom where the teacher might need to quarantine, and we've taken a teacher and just they've moved to a remote setting, right? They're still able to continue to work and provide the experience and education for students. And so and that recommendation then comes to Dr. Holman if it involves closing down a classroom or moving a classroom or a school back to a remote setting. So this is something on a weekly basis. We've been processing this, working with public health. And so, so that process is going to continue. And again, right, so whether that becomes an individual or if it becomes something larger than that, right, we would be working with public health. They have a very specific definition of what constitutes an outbreak that I won't get into here, but that's something we're aware of, and certainly, as Dr. Holman mentioned, right, we have the ability to get in close contact with them, when we need to. And part of the process actually is even to help with the contact tracing is to have that connection with public health. So it's something we've had experience, and thus far have been able to not have multiple cases in any of our sites where we have staff and students working.
And our COVID-19 safety plan actually has some nice visuals around the positive case response plan and information about that as well.
Director Sage, thank you for waiting.
Sure. Well, thank you, Dr. Holman, for developing that relationship with King County Public Health. In addition, Siri and I are on a group that meets with King County Public Health about every 3 weeks, and Dr. Holman also attends those meetings. So he's very connected, and we are trying to stay on top of all of the public health recommendations for our area.
You're muted, Eric.
Sorry. Any other questions on this presentation? Director Blazner?
Yeah, thanks. So thank you for the social emotional learning and those pieces coming forward, and those efforts in that area. That is another very key component of what's going on, not only due to the pandemic, but in addition to the other things going on within our country at this point in time. So having the opportunity, I was curious to know, and at some point, maybe this is in a board brief or in some other way, is how many students do we have accessing our counselors, the social emotional, right, in that virtual world? Are we seeing an increased need in that area? Just sort of getting a feel for what's happening for our students in that realm.
I'm not able to cite specific numbers, so that can be something I can follow up in a board brief with you. I meet on a monthly basis with the CEO of Youth Eastside Services, and we talk about the experiences that they're having. Also meet regularly with friends at Allegro Pediatrics, and so really kind of trying to get a sense of what are our youth in our area experiencing, and then also thinking about how are they providing services and what's their experience. And for behavioral health supports, there's such kind of a personal and intimate sort of conversation, and so there is an acknowledgement that trying to provide those services remotely is can be a little bit challenging, and so which is why we're trying to turn some things back on in person, so that way we have a blend of opportunities, and if nothing else, the students can establish some in-person contact and build that relationship, and then if they need to, extend it in the online setting. So so the service has been there. It's not quite as much as we would expect relative to what we have every reason to believe is the need. And so that's why we're continuing, and Johnny Fu's really been good about continuing to push on different models to try to get services out there, and then also really, I didn't speak as much around some of the secondary level, but also looking at how do we increase supports for parents who are more willing and interested in participating in this type of environment and getting supports, knowing that their parents are people's adults. They're grown-ups who are in a position to provide some of those supports. So I'll follow up in a board brief once we pull those numbers for you.
Great, thank you.
Director Stewart?
Yes. I'm not sure, Matt, if it goes into your area or not, but we'll go for it. God knows it wouldn't be the first time I've asked the wrong person. If both students and staff, for that matter, are we making sure we know whether or not there's a situation where they have a vulnerable family member in the house, if you will, such as if families are multi-generational, whether it's staff or whether it's students, the idea being that I would hate to have staff have to choose between a job and not infecting grandma in the house. I don't know how many we have that are really multi-generational, but I think we have enough, to be quite frank. And we also have some of those staff who have children who are fitting into that category. What kind of provisions are we making for those folks so they know that they can participate in this system without having to worry about how they're participating in it?
Yeah, I'll take that one, Matt. So for our families, we actually don't ask that question, and that's one of the reasons that we actually led with them selecting the learning model. There's a consideration that families have to make. There's the learning experience of their child, but there's also the health and safety piece for their own individual situation. And so I think that's why providing both an in-person and a remote option, helps our families. When we survey our staff, that is one of the questions that we ask. And the CDC calls it a person being at increased risk. And so we ask, are they seeking an accommodation, or do they have a family member and are they seeking an accommodation?
Good. Thanks, John. I appreciate it.
Okay, any other questions on this part of the presentation? Okay, seeing none, John, is there another section of the update?
Yes, there are 5 more sections.
Okay.
So we will continue.
Excellent.
And our next cabinet member to join us is Dr. Joy Ross, our Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources, to talk about some of the work involved on her end. Dr. Ross?
Thank you, Dr. Holman. I saw those faces when you said 5 more. I am pleased to tell you that I obeyed instructions and I just have 1 slide. But that being said, as I was listening to my colleagues talk about their respective areas, I thought about how human resources is embedded and truly serves as a support to all of the efforts, be it teaching and learning or school support. And so really the thread for us in human resources is that we are the department that works with staffing. And so when we think about the combined approach of our learning models, both in person and remote, being the two options in which students and teachers will engage moving forward, HR functions as a support to those processes, recruitment, hiring, employee relations, and all with the effort of ensuring that we have certified and classified staff in place to ensure that spaces are created for students to be successful. I think one of the things that was a good reminder was our guiding principles. And as I think about the lion's share of work over the past 8 months, that has come in the form of labor relations and bargaining. And those guiding principles have certainly served as cornerstones for our collective interests, both LWEA and the district. And I think I would be remiss from HR if I did not acknowledge that that is where a significant body of work has been done. We will have a very detailed report on that at a later point in time. But minimally, I want to talk to just the level of collaboration, creative solution focused problem solving, and just strategizing to ensure that the work conditions for staff were such that allowed adults to show up in a full and healthy and holistic way so that kids could be able to access learning and navigate this unprecedented time of COVID and pandemic. So I think I would be remiss if I didn't just shout out all of the players in the bargaining process and just how important that is to moving forward in terms of all of the things that you have heard about already with teaching and learning and school support, the COVID safety plan, and all of the systems that will be in place to make sure our students are successful. With regards to our K-1 staffing updates for certified positions, we are very much engaged in a robust process that will actually kick off tomorrow, Wednesday, and Thursday of this week for the hiring of additional staff. Mike mentioned that in his portion, and seeing HR as that support, our jobs are how are we creative, how are we innovative in our systems approaches to make sure that these functions happen in a way that minimize efforts from buildings and departments while ensuring that our approaches support best practices. And so a very tangible example is that we are currently in the process of vetting 100 applicants who are certified to teach. We have interviews set up for probably about 60 of them with the expectation that we're going to hire probably about a quarter of them. And so HR's role in that is to ensure that we have processes and systems and protocols in place to support that happening in a very timely manner, of which we've already referenced earlier on tonight. Also very much involved in similar processes as it relates to classified staff. And so we are continuing to post, being very creative in leaning into social services agencies, to allied associations that we may or may not have engaged before, but really being proactive in how it is that we engage the community to make them aware of the openings that we are having and the timelines in which we are looking to fill those processes. One of the things that we really decided was important to ensuring that we were supporting our buildings and departments, we wanted to be intentional about designing a suite of services from HR that our buildings and our departments could really rely on. And we would then take on the lion's share of screening and creating rubrics and interview tools that allowed those processes to function more smoothly. And so that's been a lot of the work from our recruitment team in support of the K-1 return. And they will lead those efforts, which give principals, level directors the opportunity to focus on academics, SEL, all of the things that kids need on the ground, and we take the lion's share of that work. So excited about that protocol. We will share more of that at a later point, but just wanted to first and foremost, speak to the larger body of work in terms of the union work, and then staffing in terms of certified and classified. Questions?
I have a question, Joy. Have we had to make new hires as part of the as part of rolling out this return to school? Have we had to hire additional teachers or other staff?
We will be, and
Okay.
that's this process that we're going to be engaged with beginning this week.
Okay. Any other board member questions?
Just a thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank
It's a lot of work. Thank you.
The team has been tremendous in being strategic in thinking. So it's exciting to be able to support the efforts that touch the lives of kids. So
Okay, thank you.
thank you. Thank you.
Sorry, turn on my second mic here. Next is Sally Askman, our Assistant Superintendent of Technology and Information Services, to share with you about her division.
Thank you, Dr. Holman. Hello, everyone. So focusing on the transition to the new learning models, the division focus has been in 3 critical areas: gathering and analyzing the data and packaging it so we can take action on it, technology and system readiness, and staff training and customer support. So we've talked a little bit about surveys that are underway. Our family survey for in-person or remote confirmation or change of a selection in the process in the learning model is out, and it will close tomorrow night for K-1 families at midnight, and then for K-2 or 2-5 families the evening of the 13th. Our staff survey opens tomorrow evening around 7:30 and will close in the late evening of January 14th. So once we have that information, then we'll be able to package it in a board brief for you all. And then the next slide, and Tim Krieger, I just want to mention, is leading that survey effort, he and his team. It's a great deal of effort. What's really neat about it is the surveys are intaking the data right into our system of record, Skyward, so it helps us then with the placement and other follow-up that will need to be done. And then in the area of technology and systems readiness, Forrest Baker, the Director of Technology Operations, is overseeing the implementation of the rollout of the new laptops. As you may recall, when inventories became available last fall, we quickly made a purchase, 5,800 new laptops, to replace the laptops in the lower grades in elementary that just weren't performing in the way that we needed them to. So those have been being replaced in waves through the schools to the families with those laptops, and we expect it to be completed by January 22nd, close to the end of the semester. And then also Forrest team has been going through every classroom. We've been doing it for a little while now. If you think about how your technology is when you haven't restarted your computer or taken your updates, we have a lot of technology in the classrooms that our in-person teachers will rely on. And so the teams have been going through and checking all the audio and video equipment, and doing tune-ups and making sure that they connect and work properly on the networks. So that's one big focus, and we'll just keep going through all the grades. We started with K1, and we're continuing to move through all the buildings, through all the grades. And then student information and digital curriculum and tools provisioning. That will happen behind the scenes. We provision several million accounts in a summer to prepare for back to school. So what we have now is between the current model and moving to in-person and remote for K1, let's say, we have just a couple days to orchestrate the provisioning and automation of all the new classes and classroom team sites where there needs to be a change, and then digital curricular tools. So Tim's team is working in concert with Forrest's team to ensure that automation happens. We may see a few delays in some access to some of the digital tools that are available, but it will be fairly quickly just as the automation catches up with the process. And then last but not least, Mindy Mallon's team oversees technology integration professional development. So Mike mentioned earlier in the presentation about the onboarding of new teachers. Mindy's team has worked to package the technology training portion of that onboarding, where there's 7.5 hours for new staff on classroom teams, smart technology. Our younger kids and our K1 teachers love to use the smart boards and the interactive nature of those devices in the classrooms. So they'll be getting some very intense training on those resources, as well as best practices in remote teaching, because they will also be engaging with their kids remotely as well. And then lastly, we have Forrest and team, our technology operations team, is working to adjust our technology support model. Since March of last year, the teams have been focused primarily on supporting remote instruction with just a little bit of support for the small cohort of kids that were in person. So what we're doing now is shifting those models a little bit so that we can optimize service for response for both in-person and remote learning. So it's a little bit of adding more people to the call center, more resources to the call center, and adding more staff on site in the buildings to make sure that we keep a high level of response for our customers. And that is the end of my presentation.
Thanks. Any board member questions? Nope. You covered it all.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, I'd like to invite Dale Cody, Assistant Superintendent of School Support Services, to provide an update.
Good evening, everybody. Nice job, Sally. No questions. That's awesome. I'm excited to share with you tonight some information about some leadership efforts that transition to in-person learning. I think what's really important to realize is the sheer amount of work and the leadership that it takes at our building level to make this happen. We need to realize that our principals and assistant principals are currently running schools, as you know, and supporting teachers, supporting students and parents, going through their normal expectations of evaluation processes, et cetera. And now what's happening is you heard Mr. Gillingham speak earlier about the COVID safety plan, and it's a wonderful document, and I encourage you to look through it. But it's big, and there's a lot of information there, and they have been exposed to that throughout the year. But now that we have people coming in person, if we think about that as a large playbook, and we think about the LOU, which has some significant information in it, it's really the administrator's job to operationalize all of that in the building, which means how do you assign responsibilities, follow through, how do you make that work in time for students to enter the building safely, as well as then providing instructional support for them? So as you can see here, I write that, the operationalizing the COVID safety plan, and I listed many of the things, and those are not all inclusive, that they have to think through. And some of these things are very different now. Bathroom use, how will that look in a building? Recess, well, each building is configured a little bit differently. How will recess look? Snack time, and while we have protocols and safety guidelines for all of these things, they have to operationalize those in their building, and each building is different. They have to disaggregate family and staff data, determine new class lists and teacher assignments. And this includes new students and teachers in their school. And while that is a tactical thing, there's also an emotional piece around that. There's also helping to support teachers who are saying goodbye to students. It's also, how do you then start school over as a brand new school year in the middle of a school year, where you're also helping students and families and staff to reconnect and provide time for them to, establish relationships and move forward. Next slide, Dr. Holman. Some of the other things is not only the people that are in our district that are transitioning, but there's also data for new students and teachers to the school. So as you know, there's a high likelihood that there are students that will need to be moved and teachers that will need to be moved. And I spoke about the not just the practical part of that, but how do we help support people through that? There's setting up and adjusting classroom settings. It's implementing a daily schedule for K1, and then planning and implementing a schedule for 2-5. And I talked earlier about operationalizing the LOU. And of course, they're part of what Dr. Ross spoke to just a moment ago. They're part of the recruiting and hiring of additional certificated and classified staff for their building. So I just wanted to highlight that the leadership and the quality of leadership in our schools is outstanding. And we're really asking them a tremendous amount of them going into this new phase. And they're doing so with great effort and great skill. So I just want to make sure that I highlight that, and I think that I have. So next slide, Dr. Holman. I want to talk for a minute about choice schools for our K1 programs. They are unique programs. What I was just jotting down here was we have schools that have KN1 students in a classroom as part of their program. We have a choice school that has first and second graders as part of their program. We have schools that have just first grade, and we have schools that have kindergarten and first grade. And so as we think about the complexities of that and being able to offer a choice school program, this is a communication that in the next few slides that we want to share with you. This has gone out to families tonight, that really to maintain a program that we're going to need more data to see what viable options there are there. So this first one is needing to continue to gather more family and staff data in order to make the best possible decision for each of our kindergarten and first grade K1 choice school programs. As a result, we're delaying the start of K1 in person at choice schools. We're disappointed to have to delay decisions on K1 programs for choice schools, but are hopeful the delay will result in the best possible program decisions for each school. Next one, Dr. Holman. Choice schools are unique programs that are personnel dependent, and we will be using the data from families and staff to determine the best pathway forward for each choice school. We value keeping students and staff connected when possible, so having more information will assist us in that goal. And then the last part of the statement, choice school families may still select an in-person option at their neighborhood school or choose remote learning. In either case, they will still have the right to return to their choice school next year. Once we have gathered information to better help us with decisions on individual choice schools, we'll communicate with families as soon as possible. A couple of things to think about. If I just use one school example, one school has grades 1 through 5, and what they've decided to do, their program is taking first and second graders and combining them together in a classroom. Well, Right now, we have a K-1 LOU. We will eventually have a 2 through 5 LOU shortly. But how do we then operationalize that when right now we have a model for first graders, but not yet second graders? Other examples, very personnel dependent, would be our dual language program. So if a teacher isn't able, and we don't have that data yet, I'm just hypothesizing that if a teacher's not available, isn't able to be in person, is there another way we could provide those students with a dual language experience rather than just say those students then have another high quality experience, but one that would be similar to other, would not be a choice school experience? And then lastly, I think we think about, as we know, the limit is 15 students in a classroom. And so if in a choice school there are more than 15 students that choose to return, how might we handle that? And is there a way to provide still the programming for those students? So that's the information I have for you tonight.
Director Sage?
A question, and Dale, this might not actually be to you, or it might be to John, I'm not sure. At some point in the last 5 days, I have read something that makes me think that students who are going to be switching to in-person with a different teacher will be able to see them or meet them remotely first. Is there going to be some kind of a meeting so that kids know who their teacher is going to be if it's changing?
Yes. So schools, when they have the class lists and they class assignments, they will spend certainly intentional time connecting students with teachers and absolutely getting to know them. And really, I liken it to the very first days of school. Here's your new teacher, and then the teacher then would, I'm sure, take them through getting to know you activities and connections and connecting with families. And so yes, that certainly will happen.
So that will happen remotely, probably for anybody who's getting a different teacher. And then kids who are going to go in person will know what that person looks like before they get to the physical school building.
Yes, and I would expect there to be reaching out to those new students, whether they're remote or in person. I would expect staff to reach out to them for introductions, saying hello, even if it's in this forum on Teams. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Any other question? Director Stewart?
Dale, I just want to thank you for addressing the choice schools. There have been a ton of questions and concerns over Facebook and other platforms about it. If a child decides to, or the parents decide to have the kid say remote, will he or she lose their slots at the choice schools? I really appreciate that, and because I think there's a lot of anxiety over that. A lot of them waited a long time to get in those schools. They don't want to lose their spots, so to speak. So thank you very much for mentioning that tonight.
No, absolutely.
Okay, any other questions on this presentation? Okay, thanks, Dale.
And I believe last but definitely not least is Associate Superintendent Barbara Posthumus, Associate Superintendent of Business and Support Services. And I welcome her to the mic.
Thank you very much. And I have 2 slides tonight, so I'll be talking about transportation and childcare. So at this time, there's no change to our offering of transportation services. However, our ability to transport all students may be limited due to kind of the challenges right now that we're having, that are special ed routes and reduced numbers of drivers. We're down about 19% of our drivers from pre-COVID levels. So, however, that said, we're surveying our families right now, and we do expect some of our families again, they're going to remain remote, so that will reduce the number of riders on our buses. And then we also expect some of our families to choose to transport their children in their personal vehicle, which will also reduce ridership. So we have implemented, additional cleaning practices and modifications to operations. All our bus drivers have been trained with COVID safety protocols. All drivers and students are required to wear a mask while at the bus stop and on the bus. We'll be telling parents ahead of time and students ahead of time, we still expect at the bus stop, students should maintain their physical distancing. Students will load the bus from back to front and then depart the bus from front to back to, again, maintain physical distancing. They'll be seated as far apart as possible. We are not limiting capacity on our buses, but we do, due to the reduced ridership, we know that they'll be able to have less students on the bus and be seated far apart. We are asking that siblings and household members sit together so that, again, to maintain physical distancing. Health attestations will be done upon arrival at school, so it's important that families are evaluating their health of their student before they send them to the bus stop and then keep them home if they are ill. We will be, opening some windows on the bus and roof hatches to circulate airflow. Our buses are going to be cleaned daily. We expect, once we have the information from the staff survey about who is taking, routes will be developed based on who said that they were riding the bus in the staff survey. And so once we have those routes developed, we will email families with their bus assignments prior to the start of classes. We will keep the transportation website updated. So check back to the website periodically for additional information. And again, just our ability to continue to expand our routes depends on the number of available bus drivers. We are recruiting for bus drivers now, and that's part of what Dr. Joy Ross talked about earlier. Okay, the next slide. So childcare, I know, Cassandra, you asked about this earlier in the evening. So right now we have two partners, the YMCA and the Boys and Girls Club, that are providing childcare programs on our site. And then we also have district extended day staff that are providing care. At this time, we're offering full day care at 8 school locations serving approximately 180 students. The Boys and Girls Club are serving students at their Sammamish and Kirkland locations as well. We will update our website tomorrow with links to interest forms for additional childcare for full day or afternoon childcare. So the YMCA has certain elementary schools, Boys and Girls Club has other schools, and Extended Day has other schools. So once those links goes up, we're asking families to submit interest, and then each provider will determine based on demand if and when locations can be added. We have to have a minimum number of students to run a site. Just in order to hire staff, you've got to have a minimum number of students. And then if demand, exceeds the space available, we also have space limits in our buildings, and they have to be able to hire staff because we've significantly reduced, the YMCA and Boys and Girls Club have significantly reduced staff. So in order to build more programs, they've got to hire back staff. So that all may take some time. So they'll be determine when they can do that. So, and Cassandra, I just want to address, I know you said there's some, there was some misunderstanding that the current programs were for essential workers only. And that was only the case in the spring. Once we changed over to fall care, we took out that essential worker language and just said it was for, critical care and emergency care, but it is open to anyone who is not able, that needs to go to work and needs care for their child.
So emergency care is one of those terms that have thrown people off, and I'm wondering if we can take that out.
Yeah.
And critical care might even suggest an emergency, and I'm not sure that our, non-English speaking families would translate that and understand it. So we may want to look at rewording that. Thank you.
Yes, the website will be updated tomorrow with new language, so that that language will be taken out tomorrow.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
I see another hand raised. I'm not able to see who it is. Oh, Director Stewart.
Yes. Barbara, will the buses have extra masks on board in case a kid forgets his or hers, or for that matter, it magically disappears on the bus, and as they're getting off, need to have a new one? Okay, great. I assume so, but I wanted to make sure everyone else heard it.
Director Polisner.
Yeah, so just a question around the buses and the transportation, knowing how much work is going into the schools, to the smaller class size, to that whole cohorting, the concept that there is not some type of limit within that bus and spacing is a little, I guess I have concerns in that regards, is what I would say. Just because how much time will they be spending on that bus in which to do so? So recognize that you have all the other mitigation measures in there with the open windows and all of that. Is there a way in which to lessen the number? Because I know we've had very crowded buses. That has been a conversation that has happened in the past. Knowing 40% of the kids would be online, you've already lessened that number there. But I'm sure you've thought about it. That would be just my one concern, really, is just the sheer numbers on those buses, because it is that size that can be the impact if you do have a case on that bus.
Yeah, and so we are following the Department of Health guidelines, which they are not limiting the number of students on buses. However, they, ask you to crack your windows. Of course, students have to be masked. We are implementing, of course, additional cleaning protocol. We do anticipate that because ridership is down, that our buses will not be full like they are, pre-COVID times. However, we also do not have the same number of bus drivers. So we are going to have to, in order to transport the students that need to be transported, we've got to have that balance between the number of students that need to be transported and the number of drivers that we have. And if we have an excess of drivers to students, then we will be able to add routes to reduce the number of students that are on the buses.
So as part of the survey that was done, was a question asked as to whether or not bus ridership would be needed?
Yes. So parents were asked, if you're eligible to ride buses, will you be transporting by walking, riding the bus, or parent transport? So we are getting that information, and we have been working on, we did a survey in the fall initially, and with the same questions. And so transportation has been working on a draft K1 ridership model based on the survey from the fall. Of course, it's going to need to be updated based on new information. Right. So,
Barbara, is there any way we could do follow-up with the board around number of elementary students indicating a preference for ridership versus historical ridership numbers?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
And potentially what that looks like on a bus as to the number of students that would be on there.
Yes, we can get that information for you.
That'd be great.
Any other board member questions? Okay.
Okay, and that's the conclusion of our Return to School Task Force update for the evening. Thank you to our cabinet members for spending the time to share in great detail, really, the work that they're going through. So, thank you.
Doc, the next item on our agenda is Public and Community Affairs, but I'm going to jump ahead. Dr. Holman, was there any additional superintendent report for tonight?
There is not. That was the entire report.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. And then the next item on our agenda is public and community affairs. Director Sage, what do you have to report?
I just have a couple of things. Today marked the start of the 2021 legislative session. So not a whole lot has happened yet, but there were a couple of Senate bills that I thought were interesting to bring up. This Wednesday, there'll be a hearing in the Early Learning and K-12 Education Committee on a bill sponsored by Senators Mullet and Wellman to implement a written plan for comprehensive school counseling. And I think what they're trying to get at is what percentage of their time should be spent on social emotional versus academic, etc. So they're looking to increase that amount of time that a counselor can spend during their day on social emotional wellness with students. And then Senate Bill 5044, sponsored by Senators Dawson Wellman, also being heard on Wednesday, discusses professional learning, equity, cultural competency, and dismantling institutional racism in the public school system. So those are two to keep an eye on and see where they go.
Thank you, Director Sage. The next item on our agenda is board member comment. Do any board members have any comments they'd like to give tonight? Director Stewart, and then Director Carlson.
Yeah, I meant to jump in on this during Barbara's report, but even if the public health department isn't mandating separating kids on a bus, I think you're going to have a lot of parents very upset if they find kids clustered in buses more so than they should be. I would really like us to explore the idea of having, I know we're short on drivers, God knows we probably have enough buses, but we're short on drivers, but the idea of having some of the larger routes, because there are some routes that are more populous than others, having a bus that follows the other bus. So once that one is completely full to a health consideration level, that the other one kicks right in and the other one takes off. Or some other method. I don't care what the hell the method is, to be quite frank, but that's the only thing I can think of on the spur of the moment. I really think that we need to assure our parents that we are not only concerned about the safety in the classroom, but on the bus, regardless of whether public health is giving us a mandate or not. I think it behooves us to look out for the kids as well.
We will again get information once we have the numbers and be able to get that to you. And I think it was part of the Department of Health recommendation was the short time on the bus as well. So that was the other piece that went into that. And yeah, if we had enough drivers to have buses follow each other, we would just already divide up the route. So that we'll know, again, based on numbers of where the kids are assigned and how many are on each bus. So we'll get that ahead of time. Yep.
Appreciate
it. Director Carlson and then Director Bleasner.
So I just wanted to explicitly acknowledge the tremendous effort that the administrators, John and your team, have put into this. This is an extraordinary challenge that you're facing, and the public may not be aware of this, or those of you who are paying close attention, either hate us because we're moving too fast or hate us because we're moving too slowly. There is nobody who is happy with the pace at which we are moving. That said, we are doing the best that we can for the students, and I ask everyone to please bear with us. This is an extraordinary circumstance that hasn't happened in our lifetime, and we're muddling through as best we can on behalf of your kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Carlson. Director Bleasner.
I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank the students who sent in the public comment in regards to the curriculum. And this is one of those pieces. I know that we have done like piloting of curriculum with our students. I'd like to really encourage, as I think about this, how do we get their voice more strongly involved within to the curriculum choice as it goes through? Because I do think their voice was very clear. I think it aligns with where our values are. So how do we get better about making sure we build those pieces in more effectively and consistently? So I'm hoping we can reach out at some point or have some conversation to figure out how to continue that, because I think that completely aligns with where we are going.
Director Stewart? Mute.
You're mute.
One of these days I'll learn, probably after this is all over. I want to follow up on what Siri said, too, because I was very impressed by the letter, by the fact that they understood that we have a lot of hoops to jump through, and there are a lot of requirements, but yet they're pushing to have us go ahead, to move ahead, try and make it the better curriculum for everyone, but at the same time, they realize that it's not an easy jump. And that's what I call understanding, and that's what we need for cooperation between everyone, and I appreciate it. And I think that goes for all the other issues that we are facing right now, too. We are doing our best. Is it perfect? No. Will it be perfect? No. Are we perfect? Hell no. But we're trying, and that's the main message. And if parents want to get involved and want to help, by all means, I'm sure that there are parts of this that could use some parent volunteers, and I would encourage it. Perhaps through the PTSA, I don't know. I'll stop there and stop hogging all the time.
Director Sage?
I just wanted to note that I feel we need more overall student voice. I really relish the opportunities that we've had in some small group settings to interact with students and talk with them, receiving email from them, hearing from them in public comment. We've even had students give live public comment, which is pretty brave, I think, and would still love that opportunity to sit in on a classroom remotely or in person, depending on whoever feels comfortable with what, and get more student voice to the board.
Thank you, Director Sage. Any other board member comments? Okay, I have two. First, I want to thank everyone who was involved in the bargaining process for the LOU, and it continues to be involved in it as we plan for returning grades 2 through 5. It's been quite a heavy lift for everyone involved, both staff at the central office and for our partners at the LWA, and I'm pleased with the progress, and that we're pulling this together now so that our kids can get back in the classroom safe, and that it could occur safely. So thanks, everyone. And the last thing I want to note is for the community, the board did not have a study session tonight, and the reason for that is that the board has been conducting ongoing learning as part of our efforts to draft the first ever board equity policy. So that's what we were doing tonight from 5 to 7. And then at our next board meeting, which is January 25th, the study session is also canceled so that the board can participate in professional development relating to our equity policy. So something that while there's no public meeting, or there's no meeting available for the public to see, the board is continuing to work on our policy with the plan of completing that this year. Okay, so the next board meeting is January 25th. There is no study session. The board meeting is being held at 7 p.m. either remotely or in the boardroom, almost certainly remotely. And then following that, the board has a Saturday study session at 8:30 a.m. on Saturday, January 30th. Similarly, be held either remotely or in the Hughes room, almost certainly remotely. So I just want to flag that to make sure everyone has that on their calendar, mostly myself. 8:30 a.m. on Saturday, January 30th. And that meeting will be live streamed for the public to view. Okay, so we've reached the end of our agenda for tonight. I will now entertain a motion to adjourn the January 11 board meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Director Bleasner, seconded by Director Carlson, that we adjourn. All those in favor, please signify by voting aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. The motion carries. The meeting is now adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you all, staff. We'll see you on the 25th.